Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another video in our quick revision series. So in this video, we are going to quickly discuss all the P3 differentiation concepts that we need to know about. But before we begin, you can find other similar videos on integration, complex numbers, vectors, in the description below. You've got links for them. We also have topical past papers for some of the important topics, and also yearly past papers. You can find the links to all of those videos in the description below. Let's begin. Let's begin with P3 differentiation. Okay, so first of all, you need to know about some P1 concepts for this. They are a prerequisite for this. So आपको सारे concepts पता होने चाहिए. For example, you need to know about power rule of differentiation, equations of tangents. How do you find equation of tangents and normals? Increasing, decreasing functions. What are they about? You need to know about them. Stationary points and their nature. How do you find those points? How do you find whether they're maximum, minimum? And also the chain rule. ये सारी चीजें आपको पता होनी चाहिए P1 के concepts because they can be tested in paper 3 as well, and they are tested. Okay. Now, let me just remind you of what the power rule was, because it's going to be used extensively here as well. अगर उसकी function है इस तरह का y equals minus 4x cubed, how do you differentiate that? You multiply by the power, so the power gets multiplied here. You subtract 1 from the power, so power में से 1 reduce हो जाता है. And then you also multiply by the derivative of what is inside the power. यहाँ पे तो सिर्फ x है, x की जगह पे कुछ और होता तो उससे multiply कर देते. For example, if you have this example here, you multiply by the power, 3 आके multiply हो जाएगा नीचे, so it becomes 4 times 3 here, and then whatever is inside the power, it remains as it is, but you subtract 1 from the power में से 1 subtract कर दिया, and then you multiply by the derivative of what is inside the power. ये जो power के अंदर वाला expression है, इसके derivative से हम multiply भी कर देते हैं. Okay, so that's how power rule used to work. This is how the general rule looks like. So you can have anything inside the power. So this box means you can have any expression in terms of x. There's no restriction on that. The rule works like this. You multiply by the power, subtract 1 from the power, and multiply by the derivative of what is inside the power. ठीक है, ये rule आपको पता होनी चाहिए from paper 1. Now, what additional rules that you need to know about in paper 3? Let's talk about them now. So this is what you're given in the formula sheet. आपके पास ये different types of functions हैं, इन सब के derivatives आपको पता होने चाहिए. ये हमने already paper 1 में कर लिया है. But then you've got some other functions like log of x, e raised to power x, sine, cos, tan, and also tan inverse of x. Now, you've got this thing given in the formula sheet जो left पे आपको नजर आ रहा है. So the derivative of ln x is 1 over x. Derivative of e raised to power x is just e raised to power x. Sine x becomes cos x becomes minus sin x, tan x becomes secant square x. And finally, if you've got tan inverse of x, the derivative of that is 1 over 1 plus x square. But of course, you could have something other than x here as well. ये हमें ज़रूरी नहीं है कि हमेशा यहाँ पे x होएगा. लेकिन formula sheet में सिर्फ आपके पास ये x की terms में दिया होता है. So what happens is when you have something other than x की जगह पे कुछ और आ जाएगा वहाँ पे. अगर तो क्या करेंगे आप? जो भी x की जगह पे आ रहा है उसके डेरिवेटिव से मल्टीप्लाई कर दिया करेंगे, राइट? सो इन दिस केस इट डजंट मैटर बिकॉज़ द डेरिवेटिव ऑफ x इज जस्ट 1. तो अगर आप 1 से मल्टीप्लाई कर भी दें इन सारे केसेस के अंदर, इट डजंट मेक एनी डिफरेंस. बट व्हाट इफ इट वाज समथिंग अदर देन x? तो x की जगह पे जो भी आ रहा होगा, अगेन आई हैव रिप्रेजेंटेड दैट using this box here. So let's say you've got ln of something. We don't know what that is, but whatever that is, आप पहले तो ये रूल अप्लाई कर दोगे, ln of something that becomes 1 over that thing, but then whatever you've got in this box, you multiply by the derivative of that. उसके derivative से multiply कर देते हैं. And that's the same thing for all of these cases. For example, tan of something, इसके derivative क्या होगा? Tan becomes secant square of that same thing, but then you multiply by the derivative of what is inside the brackets there, उससे multiply कर देते हैं. ठीक है? Similarly, e raised to power something, यहाँ पे power में x की जगह पे अगर कुछ और आ जाए, तो आप क्या करोगे? जो भी आपके पास आ रहा है x की जगह पे, उसके डेरिवेटिव से आप यहाँ पे मल्टीप्लाई कर दोगे. e पावर समथिंग दैट इज गोइंग टू रिमेन द सेम, बस ये जो पावर है उसके डेरिवेटिव हम साथ यहाँ पे मल्टीप्लाई कर रहे होंगे. That's how it looks like for all of these other functions as well. Now, for example, tan inverse of x में क्या होता है? Tan inverse of x के derivative is 1 over 1 plus x square. Again, if you've got something other than x here, उसके डेरिवेटिव से बस हम क्या करेंगे, साथ यहाँ पे मल्टीप्लाई भी कर देंगे. ओके, अच्छा, लेट्स लुक एट सम एग्जांपल्स ऑफ दिस. let's say you have something that looks like this, sine of x squared plus 2x. Derivative of sine is cos. Sine becomes cos, वो cos में convert हो गया. But then you have the derivative of what is inside the brackets here. जो x की जगह पे x squared plus 2x आ रहा है यहाँ पे, इसके derivatives हम यहाँ पे multiply भी कर देंगे साथ, right? So that's how this differentiation works. Similarly, you can see some other examples here. Let's try this, for instance, minus 5 into e raised to power 3x squared plus 2x. Now, minus 5 is a constant that remains as it is. E power 3x squared plus 2x. E का derivative, e power something का derivative, e power something ये होता है, e power that same thing ये होता है. So that stays exactly as it was. But then in place of x, you've got this thing. इसके derivative से आप यहाँ पे साथ multiply कर दोगे. Okay. So that's how this works, and you can have a look at the other examples here as well. So that's how this differentiation works, where you've got only one single function. Okay. Acha. Now, what happens if you've got multiple functions? So we actually just saw some examples of this, but let's talk about this explicitly. Let's say you've got ln of x square. ln of x square, इसका derivative क्या होगा? ln का derivative क्या होता है? ln of whatever is inside, वो आपका denominator में चला जाता है. x square तो यहाँ पे it becomes 1 over x square. But then we multiply by the derivative of this thing. x square का derivative से multiply किया, which is 2x. 2x यहाँ पे multiply कर दिया, and you get 2 over x as a result. But what if it was something like this? What if it was ln of 5x और power आपके पास यहाँ पे बाहर आ रही होती? So in the function that we just saw above, the power was inside log. तो बाहर वाला function log था, अंदर वाला function जो था, that was this power. But now we've got power outside and the log function is inside. Now, it's important to realize here that when you're doing differentiation of functions like these, you start from the outermost function. सबसे बाहर वाला function यहाँ पे कौन सा है? That is this power function. सबसे पहले आप क्या करोगे? आप power rule apply करोगे, right? So 3 comes down here, gets multiplied. So it becomes 3 into whatever was here, 3 into whatever was here. But then you subtract 1 from the power, right? Power rule में हम क्या करते हैं? Power में से 1 subtract कर देते हैं, तो यहाँ पे power में से 1 subtract हो जाए, ठीक है? So that's what is happening here. But then you have to multiply by the derivative of what is inside the power. जो power के अंदर होता है उसके derivative से multiply करना है. ln 5x का derivative क्या होएगा? ln का derivative क्या होता है? Remember ln x का derivative होता था 1 over x. ln 5x का derivative क्या हो जाएगा? 1 over 5x. But then you multiply by the derivative of what is inside log as well. 5x के derivative से multiply करेंगे, which is going to be 5, and that is being multiplied right here. Okay, so you start from the outermost function and then you gradually start going to the inner functions. That's how this differentiation works. Let's take a slightly more advanced example of this. Let's say we got this. Y equals sine cube of 4x squared plus 6x. We want to differentiate this thing. Now, remember this notation, sine cube, इसका क्या मतलब होता है? It's basically, if you have sine cube of x, that is the same thing as saying sine of x whole cube. Similarly for sine square x का मतलब होता है sine of x का whole square. Okay, so we can actually write this thing as this. We can say this is sine of 4x squared plus 6x whole power 3. Okay, now what's the outer function? The outer function is this power function. तो पहले आप क्या करोगे? पहले उस power को differentiate करोगे. So 3 comes down here, gets multiplied, and then you subtract 1 from the power. Power में से 1 subtract कर दिया, जो भी अंदर था that stays as it is. This thing stays as it is. And then you multiply by the derivative of what is inside here. Sine of 4x squared plus 6x की derivative से multiply करेंगे. अब इसके derivative क्या होगा? Sine के derivative cos होता है. Okay, so that's cos of this whole thing. But then you multiply with the derivative of what is inside here. 4x squared plus 6x के derivative से multiply करेंगे, के derivative से multiply करेंगे, and that gives you 8x plus 6. And that's your final derivative. Okay, so the bottom line is that you have to start from the outermost function and then you go to the inner functions. Okay, so that's how you differentiate. Now, you don't always have single functions like that. You sometimes have functions being multiplied with each other. So if you had something like this, for instance, e raised to power 2x plus sin x, यहाँ पे plus minus हो रहा है, आप इन दोनों को अलग-अलग differentiate कर सकते हो. You can differentiate e raised to power 2x separately and sin x separately. But if it's a product like this, now it's one single thing. ये पूरा का पूरा एक single term है. You can't differentiate both of them individually. You can't say कि e power 2x का derivative 2e raised to power 2x होता है, sine का derivative cos x होता है. You can't do it like that. That's not going to work. This is wrong. ये नहीं कर सकते. So how do you deal with this? If you've got a product, you're going to use something that we call the product rule. So you could have two expressions that are being multiplied with each other, u times v, let's say. We're calling one expression u and the other v. How do you differentiate that? This is the formula for that. This is the product rule. You keep the first term as it is. You take the derivative of the second term, and then you keep the second term as it is, and do the derivative of the first term. This is how this product rule works. The formula sheet mein is tarah se diya hota hai. You can also remember it like this: uv dash plus vu dash. Now let's take an example. If you have y equals x cubed into tan inverse of 2x, you've got this function and you want to differentiate this. It's a product. दो expressions multiply हो रहे हैं एक दूसरे के साथ. We can say x cube is u and tan inverse of 2x is v, and then you can apply the product rule. Okay. So what do we need for the product for the product rule? We need uv dash plus vu dash. So आप u और v को अलग से लिख सकते हो if you want. This is u, this is v, and you can differentiate them separately. दोनों को आपने अलग अलग differentiate कर लिया, फिर आपने इसके अंदर बस values input करनी है, and you will find your final result from that. ठीक है, you can have a look at this. This is how it's going to work. अभी आपको अलग से लिखना जरूरी नहीं होता. You don't have to necessarily write it on a side. आप directly कर सकते हो. But this is how it's going to work. U into v dash plus v as it is into u dash, right? So that's how the derivative works. You can simplify this afterwards. Similarly, sometimes you have a quotient, कोई fraction होती है. One expression being divided by the other. Again, you can't differentiate it directly. You have to use something that we call the product rule. Now, how does that work? If you've got an expression like this, u over v, the derivative of that is going to look like this. Denominator में denominator का square हो जाएगा, बस v का square हो गया. In the numerator, you've got v as it is and the derivative of u, and then you have subtracted from that u as it is and dv over dx, v ka derivative. Okay, this is how it's given in the formula sheet. You can remember it like this if you want. V square denominator mein aa raha hai. In the numerator, you've got vu dash minus uv dash. So that's how it works. Let's take an example. Let's say we got something like this: x square over tan x. You're saying this is u, this is v, u is x square, and v is tan x. U dash आपके पास 2x आ जाएगा, v dash secant square x आ जाएगा. Just input values in the formula and you can find the derivative of that. Okay, so that's how this quotient rule works. Again, you can have a look at this working here. This is how it's going to work. Then you have parametric differentiation. Parametric differentiation क्या होता है? This is what you do when you have a function defined, when you've got two variables defined in terms of a third variable. So you've got y defined in terms of t and you've got x defined in terms of t. तो आपके पास total 3 variables हो गए यहाँ पे. ठीक है, x भी आपके पास एक और variable के terms में defined है और y भी आपके किसी और variable के terms में defined है. In this case, that third variable is t. इसको हम कहते हैं parameter. ये जो आपका third variable है, इसको हम parameter कहते हैं. Okay, how do you differentiate functions like this? So basically, what we want is we want to find dy by dx from this. Now it's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is you have to differentiate these two functions separately. So first function kya hai? It's y equals 3t square plus 4t minus 7. What you can do is you can find dy by dt from this. Similarly, the second function is x equals 2t cubed minus 3. You can find dx over dt from this. Once you have both of those things, what you do is you use the chain rule. And that looks like this. Chain rule use करके आप क्या कर लोगे? You will be able to find the overall derivative dy over dx आपको वहाँ से मिल जाएगा. Right? dy over dx equals dy over dt into dt over dx. वो दोनों derivatives आप यहाँ पे input कर देंगे, simplify कर लें, and that's your dy over dx. Okay, so that's how parametric differentiation works. Now it's not necessarily going to be y, x, t, although mostly that's what you have, but it could be any other variables. Let's say you've got v equals this, you've got a equals this, and what you want is dv over da. Again, आप क्या करोगे? दोनों equations को अलग-अलग differentiate कर लिया, dv over dr from the first one, da over dr from the second one, and then what you do is you use chain rule to find dv over da. ठीक है, ये आप इस तरह से कर सकते हैं in terms of any other variables as well. Okay, now let's come to implicit differentiation. Now this is probably the most confusing of them all. Let's see how this works. Now, you use implicit differentiation when y is not the subject in a function. Y अगर subject नहीं है, आप directly differentiate नहीं कर सकते. You've got to use this method called implicit differentiation. So for example, you could have something like this: x squared plus y cubed equals 7y. You don't have y as the subject here. And what you want is you want to find dy by dx. आप dy by dx find करना है, derivative of y with respect to x. Now there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of here. एक तो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि जो y है, y is basically a function of x. Y is a function of x. तो y x की terms में, okay? So जब आप y का derivative लोगे with respect to x, that is not going to be 1 because y is not the variable with respect to what you're differentiating. Y तो एक और function है जो x की terms में defined है. Y का derivative क्या होएगा? वो हमेशा dy by dx हुआ करेगा. ठीक है? It's not going to be 1. X का derivative with respect to x, that is 1 because that becomes dx over dx. Dx over dx is 1. But y का derivative with respect to x, that's just dy over dx, right? Derivative of y with respect to x, हमें नहीं पता उसकी वैल्यू क्या है, हम उसको dy over dx रख देंगे बस, right? X का derivative 1 इसलिए आ जाता है because that's dx over dx, and that gives you 1 when you differentiate it with respect to x. You can keep that in mind when you follow this process. Now, what do you have to do here? How do you differentiate this thing? Now it works like this. It works like this. X squared plus y cube equals 7y. Yeah, इसको आपने differentiate करना है. आप क्या करते हो? पूरी equation को differentiate कर देते हो with respect to x. Since आपको dy over dx find करना है, derivative of y with respect to x, आप पूरी equation को with respect to x differentiate कर देते हो. Okay. Now, what happens when you do that? What's the derivative of x square? X square का derivative is just 2x. Derivative of x square is just this 2x. So that's pretty straightforward. But then what's the derivative of y cube? Y cube का derivative क्या होगा? 3 into y square. Okay, 3 into y square. But then you multiply by the derivative of what is inside the bracket, inside the power, जो इसकी base है y. Y के derivative से भी तो multiply करेंगे. Y का derivative क्या होगा? That's going to be dy over dx. We just discussed the reason for that. देखिए first वाले case में भी हम कर रहे हैं वो x square का derivative is 2 times x, but then multiply by the derivative of x. X का derivative क्या होता है? 1 ही होता है. 1 से multiply करें ना करें, it doesn't make any difference. But here you've got y inside the power. तो y के derivative से जो multiply करेंगे, that's going to be dy over dx. तो आपके पास यहाँ पे dy over dx पे आ जाएगा. Okay, all right. And then what do you have on the right side? On the right side, you've got 7y. What's the derivative of 7y? 7 to constant, that stays as it is. Y ka derivative kya hai? That's dy over dx. So that's the first thing you do, differentiate everything with respect to x. Once you've done that, you take dy over dx terms on one side, everything else on the other side, आप dy over dx को subject बना लेते हो, and that gives you the derivative. So when you do this process, जब आपके पास derivative आता है ना, वो x और y दोनों की terms में आ रहे होते हैं. ठीक है, पहले हम जब पहले differentiation करते थे, उसमें सिर्फ x की terms में आता था. Now we've got the derivative both in terms of x and y. Why? Because y को हम subject नहीं बना रहे थे यहाँ पे. Okay, so, and that's fine. This is your final derivative. So हमने पहले with respect to x differentiate कर लेना है, उसके बाद dy over dx को subject बनाते हैं. Let's take another example. Let's say we've got e raised to power 2y plus x square equals sine of 2y. Again, we want to find dy over dx. E raised to power 2y का derivative. E raised to power something, a derivative is just e raised to power that thing. E raised to power 2y stays as it is, but then we multiply by the derivative of this thing. 2y का derivative. 2 stays as it is, but y का derivative क्या होएगा? It's going to be dy over dx. Plus x square. X square का derivative is 2x into the derivative of x. X का derivative तो 1 ही होता है. So that stays 2x. Okay. On the right side, we've got sine 2y. Sine का derivative cos है, so it becomes cos of 2y. But then you multiply by the derivative of what is inside sine here. That's 2y. 2y का derivative क्या होएगा? It's going to be 2 into the derivative of y with respect to x, which is dy over dx. ये आपने differentiate कर लिया. Once you're done with the differentiation, you take all the dy over dx terms on one side. dy over dx को आपने common ले लेना है, उसको subject बना देना है, and that's going to give you the derivative of y with respect to x. Okay, so that's how implicit differentiation works. All right, now there are a few things that you need to know about that come in questions quite often. For example, if you're given that a tangent is parallel to x-axis, का मतलब है कि tangent आपका horizontal है. So you could have a situation like this where you're looking at the tangent at this point, ये horizontal है, या फिर उसने stationary point find करने के लिए कहा है. इन दोनों cases के अंदर आप क्या करते हो? You find the derivative, you put that equal to 0. Derivative को 0 से equate कर देते हो. अगर वो fraction कोई आ रही है, essentially जब आप derivative को 0 से equate करोगे, तो numerator equal to 0 हो जाएगा, because denominator जब right side पे जाके अगर आप ये करते हो, denominator right side पे जाके 0 से multiply हो जाएगा, तो essentially आप numerator को 0 से equate कर रहे हो. But आपने करना क्या होता है? dy with dx को 0 से equate कर देना होता है यहाँ पे when you have a tangent parallel to x-axis या फिर आपने stationary point find करना. However, if it says the tangent is parallel to y-axis, इसका मतलब है you got a situation like this, you could have a curve like this and you have a tangent here and that tangent is vertical. Vertical lines का gradient क्या होता है? It's undefined, right? Vertical lines gradient undefined होता है. So इसका मतलब क्या है? Whatever you got in the numerator, denominator में 0 आ रहा है. That's why the gradient is undefined here, right? Because change in x तो यहाँ पे कुछ हो ही नहीं रही है. Denominator में 0 आता है. So whenever you have tangent parallel to y-axis, आप क्या करते हो? You find the derivative, you find dy with dx, और फिर उस dy with dx का जो denominator होता है, उस denominator को 0 से equate करते हो. Denominator को 0 से equate करते हो, dy with dx को 0 से equate नहीं करते, denominator को 0 से equate करते हो. For example, if you're getting this, dy with dx equals this thing, and you're given that the tangent is parallel to y-axis, जो उसका denominator होगा x square plus y square, you put that equal to 0. इससे आपको एक equation मिलेगी. You're getting this, and that gives you y equals minus x square. इसको आप फिर simultaneously solve कर लोगे, जो भी उसने ऊपर curve की equation दी हुई थी, उसके साथ simultaneously solve कर लोगे, आपको जो भी x और y की values चाहिए, वो आपको वहाँ से मिल जाएंगे. Okay, all right. Then sometimes they ask you to find the maximum or the minimum value of gradient, या फिर उस point के ऊपर आपको x coordinate find करना होता है. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about maximum minimum value of the gradient, not of the function itself. तो अगर आपके पास let's say ये function है, let's take an example. You find the derivative, dy by dx आपके पास ये आ गया, 10 cos 2x plus 3 sin x. Now you're not going to say that dy by dx equals 0. That's not how it's going to work. ये आप नहीं कर सकते. वो तो आपको function की maximum value बताते हैं या minimum value बताते हैं, function का turning point बताते हैं. We are looking for the turning point of the gradient. देखिए gradient क्या होता है? dy by dx basically is your gradient function. dy by dx क्या represent कर रहा होता है? This is your gradient function. आपको इसका turning point find करना है. आपको इसकी maximum and minimum value find करनी है. So what you can do is you can treat this as a separate function. इसको dy by dx ना रहने दें, इसको आप किसी और letter से denote कर दें. Okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm saying let's denote this thing with g of x. इसको मैंने एक और function बना दिया, एक और letter से मैंने इसको denote कर दिया. I'm saying g of x equals 10 cos 2x plus 3 sin x. ठीक है? ये आपका gradient function है. इस gradient function की आपको maximum या minimum value find करनी है. So you're going to forget about the original curve. That's not even relevant now. हम सिर्फ इस gradient की बात कर रहे हैं. हम इसकी बात कर रहे हैं. Okay? इस gradient का आपको turning point चाहिए. इसका turning point चाहिए. How do you find the turning point of this gradient? जो आपका standard. How do you find the turning point of this function? ये आपका एक नया function है. इसका कैसे turning point find करेंगे? You find the derivative of this thing. इसको differentiate करेंगे. That gives you g dash of x. ये differentiate कर लिया और फिर उसको आप equal to 0 input कर देंगे. ठीक है? और फिर आपके पास जो भी उसके पास बाद x की values आएंगी, you will find them. Okay? आपका x coordinate मिल जाएगा. जब x coordinate मिल जाएगा, फिर आप क्या कर सकते हो? उसको वापस input कर सकते हो उस curve के अंदर, you find the corresponding y value as well. Okay, so this is an important thing that you also need to know about. And then finally, sometimes what they do is they ask you to find equations of tangents, and they give you parametric equations like this, right? Tangent normal या कुछ भी आपने इस तरह का पूछा है. Now you've got parametric equations, x equals this and y equals this. And now what they've done is they've basically asked you to find the equation of tangent at the point with parameter t. उसने t की value नहीं बताई आपको, उसने बस t के terms में आपसे आंसर मांग रहा है, उसने पैरामीटर टी बताया ना, तो आपको टी की टर्म्स में भी आंसर देना है. ओके, नाउ हाउ डू यू फाइंड द इक्वेशन ऑफ टेंजेंट हियर? Tangent is a straight line. How do you find equations of straight lines? You need two things, gradient and point. Gradient कैसे find करते हैं? dy by dx. तो अब उसको parametric differentiation करके dy by dx find कर लोगे. Let's say you end up with this. आपने dy by dx find कर लिया, इसको आप कहोगे ये आपका gradient हो गया. ठीक है? Now what about the point? Point कहाँ से आएगा आपके पास? देखिए point अगर तो उसने कोई t की वैल्यू दी होती ना हमें, हम वो इसके अंदर इनपुट कर सकते थे, x और y की वैल्यूज फाइंड कर सकते थे. उसने हमें पॉइंट नहीं बताया, उसने कहा बस पैरामीटर टी है, उस पॉइंट के ऊपर आपने टेंजेंट की इक्वेशन फाइंड करनी है. सो बेसिकली आपने इन टर्म्स ऑफ टी फाइंड करना है. तो आप कहोगे ये आपका जो भी पॉइंट है उसका एक्स कोऑर्डिनेट ये है और वाई कोऑर्डिनेट ये है, राइट? एवरी पॉइंट ऑफ द कर्व इज लाइक दिस. तो एक्स कोऑर्डिनेट आपका ये हो गया, दिस इज x1, वाई कोऑर्डिनेट ये हो गया, दिस इज y1. तो आपके पास क्या आ गया? you've got the gradient, you've got x1, you've got y1. आप इक्वेशन ऑफ स्ट्रेट लाइन के अंदर इनपुट कर दें, y minus y1 equals m into x minus x1. Just input values there and you can find the equation of the tangent from that. Okay, इसको आगे उसने कुछ specific form मांगी हो सकती है, आप उसको change करके उस form में convert कर सकते हैं. ठीक है? All right, so I hope that was helpful. If you like this video, make sure that you press the subscribe button and also share with others so that other people can also benefit from this. You can have a look at this description as well for some quick revision videos on other topics and also topical and yearly past papers. I'll see you again in another video. Allah Hafiz.